like my head's too big, so I'm gonna reduce that head a little bit. I think it just takes up too much of the body proportionally. Okay, so here's our overall design. I'm going to go over a few of the features of this particular lure. As far as gill pattern goes, I like to carve gills on there. I think it gives it a little something extra. A lot of lures don't have carved gills. You may want to just paint them on, and that's fine. There's some painting techniques that you can do that are very good that show that gill pattern without having to do all the carving. While we're here, I get a lot of questions about design features from subscribers who are new to lure making, so I thought it might be useful to talk briefly about the basics of lip angle. If you want your lure to dive deep, then you can decrease the angle. If you want your lure to stay on top, but still have a lot of action, you can increase the angle. For this particular lure, I'm shooting for sort of a mid-range, so it will dive a little bit, but not aggressively. Of course, there's a lot of other things that can affect how the lure will swim, such as the line tie location, the ballast location, the lip length, the lip width, the lip shape. I know all of that can sound a little bit overwhelming, but there's a lot of good information online that can explain these features in more detail than I have time for in this video. You know, one of the great things about the lure making community is that they're really good about sharing knowledge and helping each other learn. My attachment point will be just above that lip there, and then I'll have 2 hook points at the back and on the belly, and then I'm going to put my ballast here in the belly when we get to that point. As far as the top profile goes, I'm leaving a lot of mass towards the front here, so it's really chunky right here, and then it'll of course taper down to the tail, which is a pretty standard shape. I chose this point right here. I wanted to be good and clear past the gills before I start tapering again. That way I've got plenty to carve with here on the front. Need to be sure and mark our lip slot because it's going to be easier to cut now while this is still a rectangular block than it will be later on when it's all sanded and round. So I'm going to go ahead and cut that out and then mark it here. Okay, 3/8 from the front. I've got this marking gauge here, which is really handy. We'll set it to that mark. Tighten it down. And we'll check it, make sure it is centered. And once you've got it, you can scratch a line from end to end, and I can lay my top profile on there. Let's move it on over to the bandsaw. You want to hang on to these pieces that you cut off so that we can reattach them temporarily, and then we can cut our top profile. It's a lot easier, of course, to cut this on the bandsaw if all the sides are square. So if you haven't seen any of my other videos, I am a big fan of using hot glue. So I'm going to put a couple of little globs of hot glue, and then I'm going to put my block back together here, and that's just going to make it a lot easier for me to cut this next piece here. So before we take these pieces off the top and the bottom, I wasn't able to get as neat of a cut on the top profile as I wanted. So I'm going to use this sanding wheel here to get it closer to where I want it to be before we remove these top and bottom pieces. So with this hot glue, sometimes it's a little bit difficult to remove, so you can pop it in the microwave for like 10-15 seconds, and it'll soften it up and you can get it right off of there. to start thinking about hardware here. So I'm going to put a twist wire here, here, and here. And I think an 1.5 inches is going to be probably perfect. For the nose, I'm going to run my bit straight up like that. Now I can go straight back, but then I'll have to do a notch and I'll have to do all this stuff around the lip, and I don't really want to do that, so I'm going to go straight up just to avoid it altogether. Yeah. I'm starting with about a 60 grit sandpaper on a block of wood here. And now I'm going to move on to a 180 grit. My final sandpaper is a 400 grit. Now, if you wanted to go one step further, you could use a leather strop, you could use a polishing wheel and polishing compound. It's just a matter of personal preference. For my twist wire, I'm going to be using .041 diameter aircraft stainless steel lock wire. I've got this linked in the description below. I do this in all my videos. This is very strong stuff, corrosion resistant, all that good stuff. I'm going to cut a piece that's about 6 inches long. Get it to looking like that. Alright, and then we'll cut those all to length. When it comes to sealing your lure, there's a couple of good routes that you can go. One is you can use polyurethane, which works great. I use it sometimes when I'm trying to preserve some detail in certain situations. Or you can use super glue. Both work very well. I think the Instacure will give you a little bit harder shell on the outside, because what it does is it soaks into the wood and it kind of plasticizes it a little bit, and so it gives it a little bit of a shell there. And it's a lot faster, so once that Instacure sets up in just a few seconds, you're done. It's set, it's good to go. It's a little bit more hazardous to work with. You need to wear a mask, you need to have ventilation, and when you sand it, you need to be really careful and also wear a mask, because you don't want to breathe any of that stuff in. With polyurethane, it does take time. This is something you're going to want to let it dry overnight. And you might want to do multiple coats of the polyurethane. It's really a lot better at preserving some of these fine details, in my opinion. Whereas this Instacure, you'll see me wipe it with a towel, but that's because if you let it glob, it'll cure that way, and then you'll have to sand that glob out. So you can preserve detail with Instacure, but you got to be a lot more vigilant about it because you don't have as much time to work with it. In this case, I'm going to use the Instacure because of my particular timetable that I'm working on this. I need to move on to the next step right away, so I'm going to use that. So I'm going to make sure my holes that I drilled are clear for the twist wire. Sometimes they get a little bit of that Instacure done in there, and it really gums up the work. So I'm just going to clean it out real quick. And then with my polycarbonate, I'm going to go ahead, let's see here, where's my marker? And I'm going to mark all the way around like that, and I'm going to peel off the opposite side. I'm going to take some pretty rough sandpaper and just rough that up inside that line there so that I get a better bond. See, just like that. Now I can peel this off the other side and do the same thing. Let's mix up some epoxy, shall we? I'm using 30-minute epoxy for this job. Equal parts. I made a really cool video, or at least I think it's pretty cool, testing the strength of this epoxy with twist wire and how much it takes to pull these out. And I'll put a link up here to that video. It's very informative and surprising, actually, the results on that. You should check it out. Alright, let this cure overnight. I can see that the epoxy on my tape is cured, so that means that the epoxy on my lure is cured. Take a look at this real quick. Looking pretty good. The next step is going to be to add some rattles. I'm going to put these 6mm glass rattles in there. I don't know how many. We'll take a look at that. And then we need to get some ballast on it. Now I'm thinking that this lure is going to be shimmying like this, right? So I'm thinking if we put some maybe in the head and in the tail, I don't think we'll go wrong, but I think we need to place it sideways like this to get the most rattle out of it. I'm going to place these where it's going to be easy to patch. So I think I'll put one right there, because there's no carving right there. Maybe I'll put it in the cheek. That's a nice flat spot to work with. 1.275. We decided that these were 0.765. divided by 2 is going to be approximately equal to 0.25 inches. So I'm going to add that 0.25 inches to 0.765, and I'm going to drill an inch in. Let's just round a little bit and make it easier on ourselves. Now, theoretically, I should not drill through. I should still have a 1/4 of an inch left. So let's see what happens. The math shouldn't lie. Okay. I stopped just a hair short because I'm a chicken. Ah, but that's going to work. Perfect. Okay. Alright, let's put a little bit of baking soda in our folded piece of paper here. Gives us a higher degree of control with our baking soda. Okay, and let's drop these guys in. Floop. Floop. Alright. I've always had this little fear using baking soda, though. If I travel with these lures and I'm at the airport and for whatever reason they cut one of these open and this white powder comes flying out of it, that would not look good. It's a baking soda, officer, I swear. Let's just try and lock that into place. The great part about this particular method is that that's done. It's dried, it's cured, it's completely done. So I can move on to the next thing. I don't have to wait for something to dry. Let's see what we got. Oh yeah, that's cool. Loud. That's great. I'm glad I did that. I originally was not going to do that, but I'm glad I added it. Extra step. Okay. Now we need to ballast this thing. So added some split rings and some treble hooks. I believe these are owner size 1 treble hooks. I'm not positive on that, but they're something like that. Let's see what we got to start with. Yeah, see, it kind of wants to fall on its side. That's part of why you need to put some ballast, because you want it to sit upright. In this particular case, the hooks aren't enough to hold it upright. I've made these lead rounds. These are 5/8 inch. These are 1/2 inch. And then these are 3/8 inch. So that gives me a variety to work with. As big as this piece is, I think I'm going to start with some 5/8 inch rounds. And I'm going to want them kind of in this belly area right here. I'll probably put one here and one here. Let's put a glob of hot glue on there. We'll stick our lead on. And then, man, I don't know. I'm going to go ahead and put another big one, but it might be too much. I'm thinking about going with a smaller one. But let's put a big one on anyway. That's a lot of wood, so... See, that gives me a temporary placement of my lead, and I can break it off and adjust it without damaging my wood. See what that does. It's bound to do some good. Okay. See how fast it rises. And it rises pretty quick too. You know, I'm kind of a fan though. I might leave it because I'm kind of a fan of the tail up. The slightly tail up. Because when you're fishing along and you hit some brush, if you'll stop before it gets tangled up, it can kind of back out of it a little bit, slightly. So having it slightly tail up doesn't bother me too much. I've got plenty of buoyancy there for adding foil and clear coat and all that other stuff. All that's going to add weight to it. So it doesn't hurt to have a little bit of extra buoyancy there. Let's get us a couple of pieces of this aluminum foil tape. Now I'm going to take this aluminum mesh that you can see here. I got it at Hobby Lobby, and I've taped it to something portable. In this case, I've got a calendar, but I've got it oriented diamond up and down, you can see, right? So I'm going to put my lure up and down the same orientation, tape it down. The other one is going to be book matched exactly the same way. Like so. And then I'm going to use my thumbnail here, and I'm going to just start rubbing that diamond pattern into the foil, but I'm not going to do the head area. That's why I drew that in there, so that I can stop right there. Alright, when you're done, you can just peel that off of there, and you are left with a pretty good looking scale pattern on your foil. Okay, I want to be real careful. I'm going to catch this with my pinky, because if I don't, well, I didn't quite do it, but you can see it wants to curl, so be careful, be aware of that. Okay, and I'm going to align the tail and the nose. Excuse me, I may have to get this out of frame a little bit to get it right. There. Okay, and I want to go with my thumb along the center line and gently work my way to the edges. I'll use the back of my thumb again, and I'll start at the inside, and I'll press those folds out to the end. Okay, and you can see I've kind of minimized them versus what's on the top. You can see what I've done on the bottom. It kind of minimizes it a little bit. They don't go away completely, but whatever blemishes that we can't get rid of, we will cover with paint. Now, with the squishy part of your thumb, you need to find all those carvings you did, like the lateral line. I can start seeing it there, and then all around the face area. And then I've got these embossing tools. It's got a little sphere on the end of it. I bought a packet of these, and they have different sized spheres on them, but I'm going to start with the biggest one. And I'm just going to start outlining these gills carefully. I don't want to tear my foil, I'm just bending my foil. something I like to do is I like to do some gill stippling. It's not really required. But I'll come in with the largest sphere, and I'll just put a bunch of these little dots like this. Before we get started adding any color, you need to go over the foil with some rubbing alcohol, and what that will do is it will degrease that foil so that anything that you spray on it will adhere fully and there won't be any like blotches or anything on it. So this time around I'm going to use this Pinata Sun Bright Yellow to color the foil. In case you're not familiar with this product, it is an alcohol ink. You'll see what this does is it maintains the shine and the luster of the foil a little bit better, in my opinion, than a transparent paint will. Let me get my respirator on and I'll show you what I'm talking about. I had an interesting thread with one of my subscribers, and we were talking about inks and fading over with sunlight. And that is one of the drawbacks of using alcohol inks, is that the sunlight will break them down and can change the color. I haven't had any problems with that with any of my lures so far, but I don't use it as a main paint color most of the time. It's usually like a background color or a base layer or something. And I also don't have them out in the light all that often. However, I do want to improve my technique and what I've been doing, so I did some more research, I did some looking, and I've got a couple of products here that I want to use. These are both Krylons, as you can see, but the first layer I'm going to put on there is a Kmar finish. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. It's supposed to be really good at protecting the ink, but it doesn't provide any UV protection. So once we put on, I'm going to do 3 thin layers of this first, and then I'm going to come over that with a few layers of this UV clear. And what that'll do is that'll protect it from the sunlight and keep it from fading. Got my 3 coats of Kmar finish on there. And now I'm going to do the same thing with this UV resistant. I'm going to do 3 thin coats of this. Alright, a quick tour, because I've gotten some questions about my drying wheel here. I've got a barbecue rotisserie, just a standard one I got from the hardware store. And it comes with this motor and control box, it comes with a rod, it comes with this end, and it comes with this bracket for mounting onto a grill. But instead of mounting it onto a grill, obviously I've mounted it to this wooden frame that I've made. I've screwed it on there, and then I shortened this this main rod. Okay, and then on the rod I made this multi-sided block of wood. There's 2 of them, and I just made it so that each face was 1.5 inches. so that I could add these 1x2s. And then these, I've got some PVC caps here that I've screwed into each block of wood. And then on each lure, I've got a clamp here, and I've got another one here I'll show you. I just got a corresponding size of pipe to go into the cap, and I cut a little block of wood here. I just cut a little clamp, and then I got some of these screws with the wing nuts on them so that I can grab and tighten, right? You wanna balance them on the wheel. That's why I've added these clamps on this other side, because when that lure comes around and it reaches this part, it wants to kind of hammer over really hard, and if it does that enough, it can work loose out of that clamp. So I want it to be nice and smooth and evenly balanced as much as possible. So I've got the lure off the drying wheel. I've retaped the lip here, and we're going to start off with some opaque white, painting along the top and the bottom to try and cover the foil seams there. Now that we've got the bottom and the top covered, we're going to go over the top with this transparent yellow. This is the mesh I'm going to use. It's plastic. It's plastic mesh material, the diamond pattern. Found it at a grocery store with cloves of garlic. At any rate, I'm going to stretch it over the lure here. Once I've got it stretched pretty tight over the lure, I'm just going to make sure that I've got it aligned the way I want it, because I can kind of shift it around a little bit and straighten and all that stuff. I'm going to use a little bit of fluorescent orange, and I'm really just going to kind of go down the back a little bit, the back and maybe just a little bit over the shoulder here. I've dried that with the hairdryer real quick, just to make sure it's nice and dry. I'm now going to switch to an iridescent scarlet, which is a pretty cool, it's like a pearl orange color. And we're going to go over all this that we've done on the top, and then we're also going to bring it down the side a little bit. But what I will say is that when you do this, try and avoid anything forward of the gill area, because we don't want scales really over there. We want our scales over here, okay? Now that this is dried, let's do the big reveal. One thing I'm going to do now, while I still have some of this iridescent orange, is I'm just going to do a solid stripe down the back, and then we'll do some face paintings. Our final color for this lure is going to be pearlized white, pearl white, okay? And kind of like we did on the top, what I'm going to do is I'm going to, of course, do the bottom, but then I'm going to fade up on the belly a little bit so that it makes a nice transition from that stark white to the yellow, okay? it's eye time, and I'm going to be using these, what is this pattern? Rave. Alright. And I picked them because there's a little bit of color in them, a little bit of, I don't know if it's orange, but I think it'll come off a bit as orange. So, oh good. Look, they're a little bit transparent, so that will be great. That means it'll pick up some more of that orange. Oh yeah. Excellent. Alright, y'all, we're getting down to the 5-yard line here. And it is time to put our signature on this thing. But first, I'm going to put wow, I almost said vinyl. I'm going to put a water slide decal on there. These are some decals I make myself. I'll put a link to another video up here that goes into more detail. These are pretty easy to do if you wanted to add this to your repertoire. But put quite simply, it's the same kind of decals that you'd put on a model car, model airplane, something like that. Right there. And then, using a dry Q-tip, I'm going to roll the moisture out from underneath it. There we go. We're going to let that dry a little bit, and once that ink is all dried, we'll put one last clear coat on it. I like to put the decal and the signature on over clean epoxy. You can do it over the paint, but you're running the risk of messing up your paint because water gets on that paint and it looks real awful. I used to do it that way, and I don't anymore for a reason, so you've been warned. But let's put one last clear coat on there, and then we'll be ready to put this in the water and see how it does. Now that we've got the final clear coat on, it's all finished up, and I've added the hooks on there so that we can weigh it and see what we've got here. See if I can fit it all on there. Looks like 4.5 ounces, so pretty chunky. If you like the content I'm putting out, please consider subscribing if you haven't already, and give me a thumbs up so I can make more of the stuff you want to see. Also, feel free to leave a comment. I welcome your feedback and appreciate all of your support. Thanks again everyone for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.